All right, we should be live. Hello and welcome to Audionautic Deep Space Network 119. This is the Independent Musician's Guide to Production and Promotion. And this week we're taking a look at some interesting news and rumors in the distribution world with a major label possibly eyeing purchasing a distributor. So what does this mean for us independent musicians who rely on a distributor for our streaming releases and royalty payouts? We'll talk all about it. And then finally, we're going to discuss remixes, how to contact artists, how to approach remixing the track, and finally, why it's an interesting or useful idea to try doing remixes. My name is Sunwarper, and with me today is Curtis. How are you?
It's good, bro. It's a nice, gentle start today. Getting used to the whole notion of we don't have an intro anymore. We're just going straight for it. I like it. It's cool. Doing well. Spent the last couple of days frolicking in the woods, barefoot, and in the mud. And listening to some high tempo psytrance. It's been amazing. It makes all the difference to one's existence. It really does. Been doing that, and I've been getting ready for us next week. No, not next week. Next week after. And I've just been packing, loading up samples, getting everything ready. It's been fun. How are you, bro?
I'm good, man. I'm good. We'll talk more about all of that soon. It looks like Abby in the chat said that we started mid-sentence. That is the issue with going live right from nothing, from the void. I'm doing good, though, Curtis, to answer your question. I'm doing good. It's been a busy week just trying to prep. I've been trying to film batch content for when I'm gone. I'm going to live stream this Saturday. I'm looking forward to that. Just get a break from like filming, but just make some music or something. And I'm just getting ready for Switzerland, man. I'm very excited. But we also have with us Eon Lake. How are you, Eon Lake?
Hello. I'm good, thank you. Yeah. Enjoying the English summer. It's very humid, but nice. It's
what degree is it? I know you're Celsius. I'll convert it.
I don't know. I think we hit around 25 today, but I think it's more the humidity.
I'm not trying to be like, oh, it's so much hotter here. The humidity is terrible. I'm just curious what the weather is
as well. It's dangerous.
It's 77 Fahrenheit. Yeah. No, I hear you. It's like so I don't know what. Let me do the conversion. Hold on. It's been like 90 here in Los Angeles. So let me look. 90 Fahrenheit to Celsius. It's gonna be hot, whatever. 32.2 degrees here. So it's been pretty crisp, pretty toasty. I also want to say hello though to everybody in the chat. We've got some of our patrons in there who help support the show week in and week out. We've got Bendu. How are you doing, Bendu? Awesome to have you. We've also got Abby, who let us know, of course, about the stuttered introduction. We stopped doing our little intro music. That's what we voted for in the Discord. So it just goes live, and sometimes it says it's live, but it takes a second to catch up. And so we're still kind of navigating that and all of that. Ted says it's 27 degrees where they are. Very cool. Smiling Airs is also here. I'm not going to share the one that I almost shared. but Smiling Airs is here. What's going on? Abby is in the chat, of course. Welcome, Abby. Little bro is there. There he is. And Ted, of course. Yeah, what's everybody been up to this week? Let us know if you've been making some music, all that kind of stuff. It looks like Abby is working, but we're happy to have you here. Let's get into this, though. So we've got first this major label, Warner Music. This started circling in the last week that first they've hired someone with intent for this sort of stuff like distribution and things like that. But now there's this rumor going that they're looking to purchase either Distrokid or CD Baby. And that's the rumor, but Curtis is going to tell us all about it.
Yeah. I'll share the screen just so you can see it. Purely for the aesthetic. That is exactly someone who would be employed to buy an independent company and move it into the mainstream. But yes, this comes from a Complete Music Update, but I think it's a clone of Billboard, which is behind a pay bracket. So if you want to go check it out. But essentially, Warner Music is seeking to acquire another music distribution company after failing. They've previously tried. They tried to buy Believe earlier in the year, and they failed. So this guy, Michael Ryan Southern, formerly of Goldman Sachs, is trying to acquire either CD Baby or Distrokid. These are the potential targets. This is previously Universal and Sony, two other big contenders, stepped back from buying or trying to buy these guys, and so Warner Music have stepped in, and this is there to try and obviously take them through in that regard. The Warner CEO Robert Kinkle emphasizes that this will be a long-term value for music.
Couldn't even say that with a straight face.
I know, right? And he aims to use the company's market power to secure advantageous deals for artists. We've heard that before. I feel we've heard that before.
Buzzwords, my friend. Buzzwords.
It's all about those buzzwords.
Of course.
The whole point of this is what they're trying to do. Warner are essentially trying to boost Warner's share in the DIY distribution market. However, this does run into issues with things like copyright and regulation and competition as well. So, yeah, that's what's happening in that regard. That's the kind of the lowdown on that one.
All right. So what's your take on all of this then? What are you thinking? I mean, this is going to probably lead more into the theory or assumption area, thinking long term, similar to the song trader purchasing Bandcamp, and it might fall through. But this is kind of serious. I mean, we're looking at a major label now considering buying one of these distributors that a lot of small independent, but also just, starting artists and things like that rely on to get their music up there. So do you think this is something to kind of streamline the distribution process for like pushing aside these smaller artists in the sense? Or do you think this is just them trying to get a piece of the independent musicians pie because they would take royalty percentage splits and things like that? I'm not even saying, do you think this is just goodwill on the part of the label? Because I guess I'm just that pessimistic, but that is the third option. Do you think this is just Warner being like, we're going to be awesome and help smaller artists and make everything streamlined for them?
Yeah, I mean, while you were speaking and while you were talking about it, that thought did cross my mind ever so quickly before it slaps right back out of my head. It could be that Warner Brothers have gone, or Warner Music have gone, hey, you know what? I don't like what CD Baby and Distrokid are doing. It's exploitative. We're going to correct that with our own less exploitative market. That could be what they're doing.
That sounds like a major label to me.
Yeah, exactly. Ethical, right? It's very ethical. Yeah. I think they just want a piece of the pie. I think they have seen the migration of where the music industry is going, and the barrier to entry is so much lower, which means you can bypass these kind of things. People are getting on to the notion of major record labels only signing people who have a certain amount of following as opposed to a certain sound, and they've realized that this is kind of becoming the way of the dodo, and I think they're just trying to buy into that. That's what it feels like to me. I don't see how, unless I could be missing something, but from reading it and from digesting it over the last couple of days, I can't see them shaking anything up. I mean, I don't think they would do anything to shake up. You know what I mean?
I hear you. And Ian, what do you think?
You're muted, sir.
Oh, you're muted, my friend. You're still muted. I just see him going. He's got a lot to say.
Yeah, I was wondering what I thought looking at that. I mean, I think somebody wants to make some money. I think that's all this really comes down to. Clearly, it seems to me like a bit of conflict of interest, really, surely. Really being somebody to put it out and owning the distribution and so on as well. It's supposed to be an open distribution thing, but it's owned by one of its customers. I just really, I mean, I can see why this sort of thing hasn't happened before. I don't think it's good news for anyone unless you happen to be a Warner shareholder. I haven't got any shares in Warner. I don't know about you guys, but it's probably a big deal. I mean, it's big three. And it's not just anybody. It's one of the big three trying to get presumably one of the biggest distributors under their belt. I don't see how that's going to benefit anyone except them, really. Sorry to bring it down a bit, but
no, I don't think you're bringing it down at all. This is why we're bringing this to the attention of everyone, because this is a very interesting turn of events, shall we say.
Yeah, I mean,
really quickly, hold on there, Ian. Like, just hold your thought for 1 second. I want to say hello to our patron, Asef Stripe Recordings, in the chat. How are you doing, Asef? Happy to have you. Also, I really loved this one from Sleepy State. Mute is the computer protecting the monetization. And while we're not monetized yet, the goal is to get there. If you're not a subscriber yet, do please subscribe and share the video if you're wanting to help us reach that goal. But yes, Ian Lake is one to have some very hot takes and hot mic, shall we say. But
yeah. I think Chad had a similar take as well.
Yeah, and Asef Stripe also says checks pockets. No shares here. Yeah, I know you have a little more to say, Ian. Like, I just want to mention, like, I find this very interesting because I had two thoughts to this, and I kind of said it at the start, but I can see them either trying to, as we've discussed before, I mean, streaming has however many songs per day, isn't it, like 60,000 or some crazy number of songs that are uploaded to streaming through distributors every day. And I mean, that causes a whole thing when we talk about how royalty splits work and things like that through Spotify and these things. One thing I could see, and this is probably the darkest timeline, is that they could take this distributor and try to make more thresholds to get your music through them. Now, that would only be one distributor of however many there are, and others could rise up. But it could be a way to kind of take one of the biggest competitors and biggest demographics in this business currently and just kind of downsize it so they can kind of hopefully stem that tide. I don't know if that's the case. My thinking is more to the fact that this is a giant amount of money that this major label or these major labels aren't getting, because I don't know. I don't think CD Baby takes a percentage. I think Distrokid does take a percentage of every track, right? Of royalties. Yep. So they could have all of these songs that are uploaded through Distrokid. Theoretically, if they purchase Distrokid, they could get that percentage of all these independent artists that they have no work to put up. Like, they don't do anything besides deal with the distribution pipeline and all that. Abby says they do not. But even if they don't, let's say they could start, though, right? Like, they could do that theoretically, or even just get that $25 or $35 that it costs to have your music through Distrokid, or the $10 per release through CD Baby. That's money they could be getting that they don't have to do anything besides keep this distribution pipeline going. They don't have to do all the marketing like they would for a major label artist or anything like that. So, I mean, I'm not saying that's the case, but I could see that's also, there's a big slice of this pie that these labels aren't getting, and they could kind of get access into that. That's kind of where I'm going with it, where I thought, and I mean, that's not necessarily the worst thing. If they maintain it and keep it going properly, then, I mean, it doesn't matter who's getting the money, I suppose. It's just, it gets kind of monopolistic or whatever have you, as you were saying, Ian Lake. But I know you had more you wanted to say, Ian Lake, so carry on.
Well, I mean, I think you're getting there yourself, really. It's just that, right, that maybe there's a conflict of interest to some extent, but if it is just purely a commercial consideration and there's money to be made in doing this, and if they own it, then they make that money, then, it doesn't necessarily mean it's such a bad thing. It's just, they're making money from all the stuff that they haven't signed as well as all the stuff they have signed.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? If they see it as a separate venture, then I don't see how it has to be a particularly bad thing. It's whether or not it's part of a strategic move or something that we're not necessarily seeing all of, that it might perhaps be a slightly darker outcome, but it could just be, there's money there. They'd rather hoover it up than someone else. Give me the money.
I think that's what it kind of comes down to. It just comes down to this notion of, there is money over there that we're not making. We want to make that money. We must keep feeding the beast. So let's do that. I think that's what it kind of comes down to.
And I think there's probably a fair bit of money for, small labels, independent musicians, aspiring musicians, they're prepared to pay a bit of money to get their music out there. Why not take that money and then, as an organization, you can fund it, funnel it into the things that you're looking to develop. And it help you along your way. It kind of makes sense to a certain extent.
Yeah, in a dark way. I'm just looking. So I was thinking of CD Baby. It looks like, according to their website, we charge a one-time fee per release is $10, and then they say we keep just 9% of your digital distribution revenue, and you keep the remaining 91%. So there's no annual fee. Distrokid does have an annual fee. So there's those couple of things. So yeah, we've got a couple comments. There's something else I wanted to add, but Curtis, do you have anything you want to add before I read some of the comments?
No, let's go to the comments to see what the people think.
All right. So Abby also added that Distrokid has a bunch of additional paid services. They do. Yeah, that's where they get you. And then if you want to release under multiple artist names or have labels and things like that, you have to pay these higher fees and things like that. Sleeping State says, it'd be interesting to know if the indie royalties are larger or smaller than the revenue of their own rosters. I don't know. Because, I mean, you have that whole playlist thing where all these independent artists are getting on editorials and things like that. So I don't know. I would assume the major labels are getting more. Whereas there was one from Smiling Airs, which I can't read the full thing, but they have a very good point, because I think this would give them a lot of leverage when it comes to dealing with the streaming platforms. I'm sorry, the platforms like Spotify and things like that, because they'd now not only be a label, they'd be a distributor, and they'd be representing any smaller artist or independent artist or even smaller labels that go through this distributor as well as themselves.
Yeah, it makes you wonder if they want to acquire one of the ones that is like a flat fee up front and we'll just put it out there for you, or if it's one of the ones that takes a percentage and that arguably has a more vested interest in some level of success on your part, and which of those two it's looking to acquire. Maybe that might give you a clue a little bit more about what the motives might be.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think that about sums up our thoughts on this. We'll report on it as it changes. If you have anything you want to add about this whole issue and these rumors and all that stuff, let us know in the chat, or if you're watching this back, in the comments. If you're watching on the podcast platforms, please consider giving a rating. It helps a ton. We've actually gotten quite a few in the last couple of months, so we really appreciate those ratings. It helps reach new eyes and ears on these podcast platforms. And you can like the video as well on here. That helps as well. Comment when it's done. But Curtis, anything you want to add, or shall we move to the next section?
No, just watch this space. And if you haven't already, go get a Bandcamp.
Yeah. And a website, or consider a website. Yeah. I mean, it's very interesting. I don't know if it's because we do this every week and we try to report on these things for everyone to keep everyone up to date on what's going on. But it seems like in the last couple months, maybe the last year, so many things that we're kind of used to in the music landscape right now have just been changing. Like Bandcamp got bought out, right? And we were concerned about that. Nothing so far has really changed, which is great. Hopefully it doesn't. And then you had the royalty changes on Spotify, and then you've got all these new things with AI, and like it's just crazy how much is changing all in such a short amount of time. Maybe it just seems that way, like I said, because we're covering it every week. But Ian, like, what do you think about that? And really quickly, hello to Patron Survey Channel in the chat. How are you? If you've got anything you want to add about your remix, we'll be going to that section soon. Survey Channel crushed that remix. I was like, this is the first song for sure. It's opening this album. Like that. There's no way it's not.
Nobody can say like that guy.
Yeah. Like anything you want to add to this about all these changes happening and things like that?
I don't know. I think, again, we've been talking about this for a long time. The only thing that seems certain at the moment is that it's all in flux. There's a lot of change going on. There are a lot of moves being made. I think there's a shift in the dynamics, and I think I'd be a very clever person that could actually see where this is going. I think it behooves us all to keep an eye on things for now. It's not going to happen overnight. And like you say, they've tried to do things like this before and not been successful. They may not be successful this time. But one thing's for sure. The only thing that you can rely on is this will all continue to change.
Yeah, constants are changing. I got one more comment I want to read because this is a very interesting point that I always try to bring up before we move over, Curtis. So Ted says, if you don't want premium, which is a good idea not to do if you don't want to spend money, then Spotify is a good idea under the circumstance. And I think that's an interesting kind of counterpoint to, we always talk, as artists, go to Bandcamp, go to your website, these things are Bandcamp alternatives and stuff like that. But it's also key to remember that the biggest listener base is on Spotify, and it's a free thing that a lot of people, times are tough, money's hard, and things like that. So it's this option. And so it's important to kind of remember that when we think about these things, like it is somewhere that I think wise to be on, if nothing else than to kind of move people to your Bandcamp and things like that. But I think it's important to remember that consumer wise, if you're looking at a consumer aspect, it makes a lot of sense, especially in that free tier. So we kind of, as musicians and things like that, I think we kind of have to juggle the perspectives a little bit.
I think it's completely fair. Yeah. It's a good idea to be everywhere and where you put your focus. We discussed it last week, isn't it? Didn't we? Like your releases and where they go, treat it on the as we change and as this thing kind of grows and shifts somewhat. It allows you a chance to check your releases per release and see, okay, which market, so to speak, is going to be put in there. It was a really interesting conversation. You know, do you push Spotify? Do you push Bandcamp? That kind of thing. We went into a depth last week. If you want to check it out, last week's show was really good.
Yeah, definitely. And I think with that, we'll call this done, and we'll move over to our community corner. And really quickly, I just want to mention that we do have the secret sample challenge underway. It's running. If you want to get in on it, it's a little too late, unfortunately. We could maybe do something where we could put one sample up or something like that for people to make that did make the cut. But basically, everybody made some really awesome samples, one each, and then everybody got one anonymously. And we're all just going to remix it, make our own track with it, whatever have you. And I just want to give the reminder, post your submissions to the Secret Sample Challenge before July 24th. And the listening party will be on that day at 10 a.m. Pacific, which I'm going to guess is 6 p.m. UTC, Curtis, right? Because 7 p.m. is 11. Am I doing my math right? Oh, no, I've stumped him. Look at that. Eon, like, can you help? Because I think, isn't UTC your time zone or your time?
No, we're not on UTC. We're on BST, which is UTC.
That's right. Yeah. Okay. I have no idea then, but it's between like 5 p.m. Yeah, it's like between 5 p.m. and 7 p.m.
It's an hour beforehand, so it would
6
be
p.m.
7.
Yeah, 6 p.m.
It'd be, but we're in summer, so it'd actually be 7 p.m. 7
You're
p.m.
8 hours
it's an hour before.
Sunwarper.
I'm not doing math right now. It's 6 or 7 p.m. I don't know, because we all have those time changes. It's just wibbly wobbly time.
Timeanddate.com can help.
Yeah, exactly. Just Google it if you're there. You got 2 days less than a month, so you've got almost a full month to sort it out.
Well, there's also this notion of just come and hang in the Discord, because that's where we keep up to date with everything, because that is truly international in that regard. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so if you want to just keep up to date without worrying about the time, head to the Discord. Yeah, very much so. This is a good chance. There's a lot of our patrons here to say thank you. Thank you very much for joining us. We don't have monetization. We don't have sponsorships. So it's you guys that push through and allow us to keep doing what we're doing. For example, these community events, we keep doing more and more and more. And we keep bringing you everything every week as we do this. If you like what we do and you are not a patron, consider going across to patreon.com/audionautic, and you can join there, make a pledge. Starts at as little as $2, so I think less than a cup of coffee in that regard. If you do that, and you do it today, for example, you can get on board with our Star Stream, which is our monthly Patreon hangout, which is happening this Sunday from, again, 7 p.m. UTC, 11 a.m. Pacific. And yeah, that's where we really get down to the nitty gritty of community base. We're helping each other out. We're chucking ideas back and forth. It's a lot of fun, and you get to see a lot more of, hey, this is how we do this stuff. So if you wanted to do that, come down, come and say hi. And once again, thank you ever so much for your continued support. It means the world to us. Yeah, we made our StreamYard goal. So many thanks to all of the patrons and those that pledged to our PayPal for that, so we can keep the lights on for another year, so to speak. So I can do this. Oh, I can do this, and I can do this, and we can share our screen and all that kind of stuff. So it means a lot to have all of your support. So with that, let's move over to
remixes. So I think this is a really important topic because it's very multifaceted. There's so many ways to approach it and all that, but we kind of want to do an overall talk about it. So we just had on the Audionautic record label my remix album. I say my, but it's really not mine. That's kind of the point of the remix is I gave stems to 12 artists, and then they all just did whatever they wanted with it and made what's called a remix, which whatever it became. Like Eon Lake took a 2-minute emotional guitar track and made a 9-minute generative techno banger, or whatever you want to describe it as. So it's we want to kind of look at it as contacting artists both ways, in the sense that you can contact artists or they might contact you, things like that. But if you have an album or a track you want remixes done, how you can contact an artist. Then if you get sent stems, because it can be a little daunting if you get, like, if Eon Lake sends you his 120 stem project, it can be a little daunting to go, where do I start here? So we'll talk about that. We've got 2 people on here that just did a remix, and then we've got some videos from some of the really amazing artists that just knocked it out of the park there. And then we'll finally talk why you should consider doing remixes, what it can do, why it's worth doing, and all that type of stuff. So Curtis, let's start with contacting artists.
Yes. Contacting artists. Well, I mean, it's always good if you want to get a remix done by another artist to make contact with those artists in that regard. It's a good first start, I feel. The notion of just reaching out to someone is similar, I feel, to that notion of when you're looking to collaborate with someone. It's not really good etiquette, so to speak, just to go straight in with a "Hey, do you want to remix my album?" Because it's a bit markety, it's a bit pushy. It is a great opportunity, first and foremost, to work closely with people that you yourself have perhaps had an existing relationship with, or want to create a burgeoning relationship with in the long term. Maybe it's a member of the community, maybe it's someone that you have followed for a long time and you really like what kind of sound they do, and that's a good inroad. I think that's a good way to kind of bring that up. The aim of the game, again, similar to collaboration, is authenticity and building relationships with people. It's not just about getting a product at the end of the day. So it's nice to start those conversations and have those conversations and come from a place of, like I say, authenticity and a genuine desire to meet someone and find out more about their journey.
Yeah, definitely. And I think you're spot on. You want to make sure, especially if it's a new person you've never talked to, that, I mean, you could go the cold turkey route, be like, I love your music. Would you like to remix something? And I actually did that for one of the remixers. I didn't listen to Curtis's advice, but it worked out. But you can also, I think there's a couple things when you're doing a remix, you want to kind of, or remix project where you want to ask people, think about your friends, your musical friends, like on our Discord, we did a whole thing where just people were like, oh, I'd like to remix this track or this track. But then I also had people that I know through social media, maybe I don't message a lot, but we comment on each other's videos. I didn't start with like a message like, oh yeah, I was just like, hey, would you want to do a remix of one of these tracks? And then I had a couple of what I called like reach artists where, I've never spoken to them, but I was like, I love their stuff. Let me just try. And so I think it's good to kind of have all of those different, I don't want to say tiers, because all of these artists are amazing and talented and all that. It's not like any's better than the others. It's just in my own subjective reality, I had experience in talking with some of them and then none with others. And so I wanted to make sure that some remixes would be done, so I had this sort of way I wanted to do all of the approaching. But if you do want to go the cold turkey route where you're just going to ask, hey, do you want to do a remix? I think it's just really good to be like, hey, I love your music. Hopefully you know them before and things like that, but also explain the project, what's going on. And then if you're intending to do, which should be royalty splits and all that type of stuff, kind of lay out the groundwork of, hey, it's going to be a 50% split on Bandcamp or whatever, and then on through my distributor I can do shares, so we're going to do the shares in that way, just so they kind of know what's going on, and it's kind of just like how it works and things like that. Yeah, like anything you want to add?
No, I was just thinking about it that when you're going to approach somebody, they're going to fall into 2 categories. It's either someone and you approach them the same way you always approach them, say, hey, how you doing, what you been up to? And then the people you don't know. that maybe, you know, you might have had some brief contact with, but they're just people that you admire or something. And it is very different. And yeah, I suppose what Sunwarper says is important. I think really, if you're targeting somebody that you admire but you don't know, you do want to come across like, you know, you've got everything in order, and it's not going to be big pain in the hole, and it can just be just fun remixing, because we all enjoy it. But you know, things can get complicated with royalty splits and stuff like that, and if people are, you know, if it's important to them, things can get messy. So if you've got all your ducks in a row, you know, and you approach somebody, just say, look, I really like what you do, no pressure or anything, but I would love for you to take a look at one of my tracks and see what you can do with it. Then, you know, I would recommend approaching it that way. I mean, it's certainly paid off for Sunwarper.
Yeah, and you can also consider too, I mean, some artists might want money up front or something for a remix, but no royalty split, or both, or things like that. So you have to consider your budget. It doesn't hurt to just ask, right? If they say something like, oh yeah, I need $200 or something, then you can decide whether it's worth it or not. I didn't run into any issues with that or anything like that. A lot of people just in the community and in this type of music and stuff just really love the music and want to do that. And, you know, as long as you set fair splits and things like that, I mean, it's all good. But just keep that in mind. I've seen some things too, you know, some bigger artists and stuff have like a set price for a remix and things like that. Is there anything else we want to talk about in terms of contacting artists, and maybe also just like setting up the remixes, I guess would be important in terms of getting your stems in order? Yeah, like, or Curtis. Curtis, you see, yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Before, I feel, and this might be, maybe this is a me thing. I feel that before you've approached someone, before you've done anything, you should have your zip files of your stems already in place.
Yeah, that is not what I expect from you.
It's no.
What's funny is you're such a chaotic person, and yet I did what you just described, and you're like, no, I would have all the stems in order.
I would have. I think it's good. Firstly, name them properly as well. I think that's always a good thing to do. But also, I think of previous times where, for example, people have approached me for a remix, and then it's taken them, say, a month to get me the stems, and by that point, I've already. Oh, I'm sorry, I've got something else going on now. You know, if there is, you want it to happen, you want to get it done, you need to show that intent. You need to show that. And so you go, okay, can you remix Moonmeld, for example? Yeah, sure. Okay, cool. Here's the zip file. Here's the link to the zip file. Thank you. Let me know when you get done. That obviously not that cut and dry, but that kind of thing. It shows that intent. It shows that you're ready to go. It shows that you're organized, and that it can go somewhere in that regard.
I think also, just really quickly, you want to also kind of to what Ian, like, and you're saying is when you contact somebody, even a friend or something, have the whole roadmap planned out. I'm going to start releasing singles on these days. I need all track submissions by, 1 month before. So this date, I think I said like 6 weeks to give leeway in case people came a little late. I could be like, yeah, no worries, because we still have 2 weeks or whatever. And then also have the release date. Like, hey, it's going to come out on June 21st. I need the tracks by May 1st or whatever. And the singles are this. I'll know the singles, a couple weeks beforehand once the songs start coming in. And I'll let you know what tracks are going to be the singles. Just kind of have everything laid out, and then that's just the best way to have it. Then even if you don't have the stems right away, like for me, I asked each artist, like, what song do you want to remix? Because I really wanted it to be, this was a very important album for me. So I didn't want to just delineate who I thought could do this song and that song. I wanted them to feel what they resonated with. So once they told me, then I would make the stems. But I wasn't like taking a month to do it. It was just like, so there's a few ways to do it, but I think, Curtis, you're spot on. Have it prepared. Were you going to say something else, Curtis?
No, that's what I had to say about that.
Yeah. Okay. On that note, then let's move over to making the remix. So I think I can't remember how many stems Moonmeld had. I think, Ian, like, you had a decent amount of stems there, but I actually, for most of these tracks, didn't do a ton of stems because it didn't require it. The one that did, nobody remixed. Departure Point, that had like 90 something stems, so I was thankful I didn't have to do that one. But
a Lifetime had quite a few stems, considering if you listen to the track itself, because you've done all that sneaky orchestral stuff at the end where
that was it,
really layered, We need, you know, the first and second oboes and.
Yeah, I know. I did all those differently because it was a commissioned track, so I went all out.
It worked really well, but it's just it took a little while to think. Oh my god, it's only 2.5 minutes long.
Yeah, like was it like the tables had turned? Were you like, this is what others feel when they remix my tracks?
That's the thing. Nobody has ever remixed a track of mine.
Dude, send me something.
Okay, we can put an end to that. We can put an end to that.
We're putting a team together.
Exactly. I need to think about this, but yeah, it's there were quite a lot there, but I mean, that's good.
So what did you? Okay, so let's start with you because I know you weren't able to prepare anything, and that's okay. Life is crazy, but let's because Curtis shared some video and stuff like that. I think so. On your end, let's just talk. You get, I think, let's say it was 60 stems, right? Okay.
Yeah.
You get 60 stems, and it's 3 minutes long. What are you doing first?
Well, I think it all depends on whether you know this person or not, and your relationship with them, what you think they know about you, and so on, what you think they might want from you. And the reason I say that is because they might just want something different, something reinterpreted, you know, but not so different as to be almost indistinguishable. And they don't necessarily want you to do what I did, and run riot and do a crazy thing. And you can do that with friends, maybe, that you know well and you know you have respect for, but you might want to hold back a little bit and not run roughshod over someone else's music if you don't know them as well. So, you know, I just wanted to make the point up front that you might want to approach it slightly differently depending on what your relationship's like.
Interesting. See, I almost think maybe it's just the way I think of remixes, but if someone's asking you to do it,
yeah,
they want your idea. You know?
They want some amount of you, but they don't want.
You bring up a good point. Maybe you just be like, "Hey, what are you looking for in this remix? Like, can I go all out, or are you looking for
just
like,
to discuss it, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you know, you can have a chat about it, and if you don't know them very well, then it's a good way of getting to know them a little bit better, and just, you know, making sure that they get what they want. But then once you're in it, the first thing that I do is I forget about the stems. I listen to the original track twice in 2 different ways. Firstly, directed listening, where I'm absolutely concentrating on everything that I'm hearing, and I'm making mental notes about what I'm hearing and how it's constructed and what it is about it that makes it work. And then I listen to it again in a passive way, often when I'm doing something else, so that I'm kind of overhearing it and experiencing it sort of remotely. Once I've done that, then I go to the stems and start going through it and thinking, okay, what have we got here? What have we got to work with? What jumps out at me? What do I think the sort of the beating heart of it is? What is it about it that makes it work? And how might that, you know, be used differently or in a different way to achieve a similar effect? So, you know, things that are like pivot points. I mean, it was quite easy with this one because there's one main piece. It slightly evolves. It's kind of like 2 sections, and it has a linear flow to it. But
that's what I call the Sunwarper special. When I'm lazy and just need to write 2 sections with a little bridge.
I love something that's kind of linear, because even the bits that are different are kind of, you know, quite similar too. It all fits in well.
It's different, but same.
I ended up thinking, do you know what? It is one thing. I don't want to break that up necessarily. And I started just enhancing things and putting things in. Often when I write music, it's just hearing something, and then you hear something else, and it makes you think of something, and you just throw ideas in, and you edit it later on. So I just started throwing in loads of ideas, and it became some blissed out version of the original.
Not just version, a 9-minute version.
Yeah, well, it was all very bells and whistles and great sweeping sounds and that. And I thought, this feels like the payoff to something that's less musical and more, I don't know, I think maybe you've got to earn this nice bit. So I thought, well, how about if you have a bit in front of it that's like really rhythmical and, you know, driving, and not really the the same thing, and you maybe hint at this a little bit, and you bring it in as a kind of a reward for sticking with it later on. And it
so that's exactly how I hear that track, your remix, because it's like the crescendo, that final bit has so much emotional impact. And I mean, of course, I'm biased in the sense like my listening lens or ears wrote the track originally, but like I hear it and I just hear that motion, and it's like, oh, I hear your
original's kind of in 3 parts, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's the establishment, there's a bit of a bridge, and then there's an evolution of it. And I thought, well, if you do a bit at the beginning that's quite rhythmical, and then you have the payoff in the middle that is like some blissed out sort of breakdown, and then you can bring everything back in at the end and just have the whole lot, kind of what I call a Neon Lake special, called Wall of Sound.
I thought just it being 9 minutes is the Eon Lake special.
But then it's like it's 3 parts, the same way as the original was, just sort of like in
expanded.
Yeah, and I kind of liked the circularity of that.
Yeah. Something I found interesting when I was cutting up promo for your song, I was like, every section you cut, it almost, like, especially in that final bit, it almost sounds the same, but like every loop is just a little bit different, like there's just this there's almost no end point from where the bar starts and the next bar you get, like where the one bar ends. It's very
so regimented, and then they start looping again at different phases, and it starts to fall apart a little bit until boom, we all get going again.
And Curtis, you look like you wanted to say something.
I can't remember now. Just the idea of the Wall of Sound and the Eon Lake special, something along those lines. Yeah, but just thinking back, while you guys were talking, I was just thinking the first time I listened to the remix from Eon Lake, and I was just blown away. It's just insane. It is insane. It's absolutely insane. But I mean, it's a very good way of approaching it, Eon Lake. This notion of listening to it, absorbing it, taking it all in, and then seeing what sticks out at you, and then running with that, so to speak, and how to turn that on its head in both the best of ways and the flippest of ways.
I usually either go with it or against it. I felt that was kind of going with it that time. It wasn't sort of trying to turn it into something completely different. It felt more like a similar approach. But
I think that's what makes that remix so fascinating to me, is that like it sounds like the intent of the original, but it sounds nothing like the original. Like the emotional depth is there, right? But it's done in a completely different manner, completely different genre. It's far more circular, far more like, I'm not saying it's chaotic, but it's far more, there's a lot more going on, like in all that. Very interesting. Curtis, do you put a little video up of Moonmelt? Do you want to first share a little bit about it, or do you have the project you want to share?
Let's. It's a good question. I have the project file here. I also made a little video just for the sound. I was just the way I was kind of tweaking the drums.
Dude, okay. I'm so glad you did the drums, because I wanted to ask you. I haven't asked. I've been waiting. I wanted to ask about the drums because they sound way thicker than mine, right? Or like different. Are they different drums, or are they layered or something?
Well, I thickened up yours and processed them a little bit, and then I added my own drum kit on top.
I had a nightmare with that song's kick.
As a drummer, I sanction this approach. More drums.
I had it. So I was running short on time with this because this track was obviously, it was a monthly release, right? So I had a real issue with that one because I had to keep like rebouncing those drums because they had so much high end, and it just drove me nuts. And I kept trying to like filter it and do all that. So yeah, I mean, I'm very happy with the end result, and the song's done well and all that. But when I heard yours, I was like, ooh, I like that. So should we play this, or do you want to show the project file first?
Do the video first, because then you can hear what it sounds like and where I'm going with it, and then I can show you what I did specifically with the drums if you want. Because where you came in again, that yin and yang, I kind of saw that in a way and went, okay, this is where I can move in. So let's start with the video.
Okay, perfect. Before that, from Smiling Errors. After years of practice, Eon Lake has learned how to use rhythm to make all the swells come together. Yeah, Eon Lake is a rhythm maestro. I'm still waiting for some drum samples from him that I could just use in every track, but we'll get there. We'll get there. Anyways, let's show this. So is this from a live stream, Curtis, that you did?
Yeah, so my live stream for a couple of back in April, I think. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So we're gonna check out his project.
His high readers. It turns out everyone fucking does it because it's such an easy. We're gonna thicken it up a little bit.
I also like the cat walking past on that one camera.
It's always good when the cats come in. But yeah, in that line, so you can kind of see where I kind of went with it in that regard. Specifically the drums. The name of the drums was just to kind of go, okay, that's one thing that I can get on board here because I like layers of drums and I like the big thick drums in that regard. So I went in. If you can put up my project file, which is just being shared here.
Yeah, I got you.
You can see here. So if you come to the kick, for example, where are we? And now, there we go. Now it's frozen. So you can see I've boosted. Originally the kick was there, for example, but then I boosted it by a whole. I boosted it by 8 dB, and then filtered it to get rid of the high note. I actually didn't actually saturate. I might have saturated the whole bus. I did. I have saturated the whole bus from yours. I went through your
which is funny because that already I think I can't remember if I sent you the bus effects version. I'm doubting it now because it wouldn't look that tiny. But I had a limiter. Yeah, it can't be because I had a limiter and a bunch of like tape saturations and stuff. Yeah.
I think you just sent me the individual stems. I think
so. Yeah.
Okay.
And then they're over here. They're always at the end. And then I picked the ones that I liked. I got the ones that I didn't use over here. But then I picked the ones that I like and basically went through them and just boosted them. Like that rim, for example, 19 decibels of
yeah, that was intense. That was a ghost note sound.
That was a lead percussion.
Yeah.
Very much so. I mean, again, so like the snare boosted by 10 dB, hi-hat 14 dB, basically brought them out and made them at the very top. And then you know what? There's not enough drums there. So what I'll do is I'll just make another drum kit. And so you can see I've got the Sunwarper drum bus and I've got my drum bus. And then I've got the all drum bus essentially.
So you did your bass, the Curtis special for bass to drums.
Yeah, I mean, I do it quite regularly.
Layers on layers, yeah.
Layers on layers.
And then you bus. You had a bus as well. That's very meta. Very you.
Very much so. But I mean, the idea of it is essentially, as you can see, is I did it all in session mode. So you can see a crossover here. So overhead hats then tells up bringing the up here. Now, the idea is that it's built to do a live version, which sadly time got the better of me, and I haven't actually done it. I would like to go back to it, but I essentially wrote it
July 11th, dude.
Look, we'll see.
Wouldn't that be cool?
It would be cool. It would be cool. Maybe if I bring this into the other computer. But yeah, as you can see here, like I've got the flow and I've got the notes. The idea is to perform it live and then do overdubs on top of it. And yeah, so that was kind of where I was going with it. In that regard, it all came about making things thicker, and it all became about making things layered. And yours was like you say, you performed it, and it was kind of like it was minimal, and it was there on the on your machines and stuff like that. And I brought it into the DAW, and I was like, okay, well, let's make it something that positively isn't live based and stuff like that, you know, and positively can be made. So like, I took your chords and just doubled them up, tripled them up, pitch shifted them, and things like that, and it became about making things thicker in that regard.
Yeah, it's interesting because I had stems for this track. Like most of it was made in the DAW, but what I find interesting is we took completely different approaches to thickening, especially like with the drums. So with my drums, the thickening was all done with effects in a bus to bring all those original sounds together, glue them. And then, I mean, me personally, I feel like in my original track, the drums are the loudest part. Like when I hear it again, the kick and the snare are like that really, because I have a lot of side chaining and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But here you used layers to do that and then bust them all together and kind of put that all together. So it's speaking yin and yang, it's interesting how we took two approaches to do sort of a similar idea. But your drums, because you did all these different layers and things like that I just didn't have time to do because of the time thing, they have a lot more like I feel like your snare has a lot more, and probably that's the little plate that you put on it, but a lot more tail, like decay.
I think, yeah, it's the combination of the little plate and the a vocoder. Put a vocoder on it.
Yeah. Also, one other thing. Oh, interesting. A vocoder. That took a minute to register in my brain. But one other thing I wanted to mention too is when it comes to the whole remix aspect, one thing that you did that I thought was really interesting, and a couple other people did it too, and I want to highlight it because I think this is a really good place to start when you're remixing and things like that, is I make a lot of extra parts for a track, right? Like, so when I record a track, I record a bunch of different layers in basically like a loop, and then I just structure the track and I mute parts and things like that, or I put parts really quiet in the mix so they're there, but they're not really audible. A lot of the remixers took those stems and made those the focal point, like the Lost Coast remix. He took that and he took a couple of guitars, and that track was what, 6 years old or something, and they were tracks that were scratch takes from way back then that I just didn't think were like good enough or something, and yet they completely changed the vibe of the track and they actually fit really well. For your track, Curtis, I forgot this was originally going to be a vocal song, and I had made all these vocals, and then I couldn't finish the vocals in time, and so I put a loop of like one segment in the refrain, and then I think I left a couple other scratch takes that I forgot to mute when I sent them to you. And you took them and put them all throughout the track.
Yeah, they're here. Yeah. I took your different harmonies and I took your different lights and then boost the crap out of them, and then turn them in. You had a lot of and I was like, you had a lot of reverb on them. I was just trying to tell that in a little bit.
I buried them because, like I said, I wasn't done with them, but I was like, oh, in this refrain, it could use this like subtle vocal sound. You know, like you don't notice it's a vocal, but it's there and kind of just like in your ear. So yeah, I reverb drenched them.
He did, yes, and so I thought to bring them to the front and just turn this into you singing your little heart out as the synthwave track was pumping. That was kind of where I was going with this. Great vocals, really good fun to work with those.
Yeah, they were one take that are full of mistakes, like in vocal pitch, and I just like fixed them because this was just I make a scratch idea, right, and then I at some point will fill it out and redo it and do it properly and stuff. I never had that time because the deadline ran up, so I was like, oh, I'll just bury them in the mix, you know, do some pitch correction and reason and things like that. So yeah, but I wanted to focus on that. So when it comes to you get all these stems and stuff like that, something I do when I remix is I find the quiet parts and make them loud. You know, because it's like that I like hearing that, and I like that intent because it's like you never know when you're making the track what parts will resonate with someone. And so, like, you know, we always talk make a lot and then mute and do this and that, but sometimes those are the parts that actually make, you know, resonate with someone most or something. So I think that's a really important notion. Curtis, before we show a couple videos from the other remixes, is there anything else you want to cover in the project file or just in general about approaching the remix?
One thing I wanted to just approaching remixes in general, or this one specifically?
Either or both.
Either or. One of the things that I got a lot of joy out of in this particular instance, if I can find it, is I took the original arpeggiator, chopped it up into a million different pieces, and then automated the drone. And then I used a MIDI input from Slink presets to create the intro, and I basically chopped up and fragmented, glitched out your original arpeggiator, turned it into something new, and then layered that with the original one. Auto glitch, that's the one. I think it's here. Yeah. So these leads are going all the way through, and it's just a little piece of what you've got going on here, sliced into pieces.
Super granular. Is that what turned into kind of like that pad in the background, that like high pitch pad at the start? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's exactly what that is, and it's MIDI. It's it's the original file then basically glitched out and taken, sliced into many different pieces, and then randomized everywhere, and that kind of was a nice basis to create something, and then blend it in with the original sign. It was a lot of fun in that regard.
Interesting. Also want to say hello to Stillhead, one of our patrons in the chat. Says, hello, I'm late to the party. It's my son's birthday tomorrow, so I had a bit of preparing to do. No worries. We're happy to have you. We're actually going to share your segment shortly because Stillhead made an absolutely beautiful remix. Just stunning. Let's go. So we'll share that in a second. I just want to go through a couple other chats, but I really like that idea with the glitch thing. So where is it? I'm not seeing the chat's moving. Thomas. Ted asks, any tips for beginners? I mean, I think a lot of what we're saying is what ways to approach it from the beginning. So you take all these stems when you've got the track and then find something that resonates with you. Like Curtis found the drums and did some really cool processing there, but he also took those vocals that were buried in the mix and made them up in the front and pieced them together. Or take a small segment of the track like he did with that little granular section and do something interesting with it there. The other thing you can do is like Eon Lake, go through the track a few times, find what works, and then write down. The Eon Lake did it the like professional way. Like if you watch Drumeo, that YouTube channel where the drummers listen to a song without drums, and they just take diligent notes of like, oh, this is that section, this is that section. This dude is, I guess because he's a drummer, he's doing that. So you could do that, take the structure, and then you can, with that written down format, the graph and all that, however you want to discuss it or call it, you can then either build the track using that as a reference or completely do away with that and do something new, but you know the source now, you know how it works, and you can always go back to that for reference. So that's what I would say. Find something that resonates with you and build off of that, because me personally, I think a remix should be completely different from the original. And that's, I'm not saying that's a controversial take, but that's not what everybody thinks. I think when you listen to some remixes, they're very similar, but like me, I think find one part of the song and mute everything else and do something new. Change the pitch, completely change the chop it up, do something totally different. Like Frequency Control Center, I think, is a nice middle ground in his track. One of our label mates did a remix for Soundtrack for a Rainy Day, and I didn't have any stems for it because it was literally performed live on the SP404. So I was like, here you go, dude. Here's the 2-track. Just the final version of the track pre-mastered. And he took the intro chords and started the song with that, and then just built this completely new song. He changes the key, takes a granular chop of one part of the track, one part of the chord progression, and makes a completely new chord progression in a different key, and then just builds off of that. And so that's like my idea when it comes to remixing. But there's no wrong way to remix. Just do whatever you find. And if you're beginning, try small things first. Yeah, like you had something to say, I think.
No, I was agreeing with you. Absolutely. I think there aren't any right or wrong ways. That's kind of the difficulty of it, but it's also the brilliant thing about it is you can kind of do what you want to a certain extent, especially if it's, somebody and you're not deliberately gonna, knock out some heavy industrial noise mongering thing. As long as you kind of I mean, a little bit of that wouldn't hurt, but you know what I mean? It's there aren't really any right or wrong answers, and it's kind of the challenge, but it's also the fun of it.
That is the joy of it. We're running a little short on time because we have to film something when we end, but I'm going to share the videos from Atlas Castle and Stillhead. I just want to read really quickly. Smiling Era says, good beginner tip is take any music and make it fit a specific genre. Some are easier than others to get going. Techno is a good place to learn as it has some rigid rules. That's a good point. Yeah. Or even just like setting up a 4 on the floor and then looping sounds on top. Maybe put it in a sampler, chop it into 16 chops, and play that on top of a 4 on the floor, and see what happens from there. That's a nice little way to start. All right, I'm gonna share. Let me just take this chat off. I'm gonna share Atlas Castles first, and then we'll go to Stillhead. And if anybody from the remixers has anything they want to say in the chat, I can read it after. But here's Atlas Castle, who did a remix of Ephemeral Enigma.
What's up, everyone? I'm Atlas Castle from Copenhagen, Denmark, and I'm very happy to be able to say that I'm featured as well on Sunwarper new remix album. And I just can't wait for you guys to listen to what went down here. So basically, if you don't know me, I just create music in the now. It's live, it's recorded straight on the go with a very minimal setup that I really enjoy. And that's what I did with the remix. I used a sample sound that I really enjoyed from Michael's original track, incited it inside my Digitact, and just went with the flow. So I tend to jam and experiment in the technosphere, everything in between ambient techno, deep techno, minimal techno, whatever you call it. I just try to find a vibe and stick to it, keep it minimal and get into the moment. So that's just what I did here. And yeah, you're just going to be able to hear it. I am actually very excited to hear the whole album. Congrats to everyone involved. And yeah, we keep in touch. I hope you guys will enjoy what happened there. And we talk soon. And no, actually, I kind of forgot one thing. Michael wanted me to talk a little bit about my process. So I've been working with the Torso T1, which is my main brain. I literally just do everything from the engine. It's like being able to play the keys, being a pianist, playing live, like you control everything on the go with that one. Then I have the Digitact, which is my main drummer. So all the drums parts and samples are coming from that machine. And on that remix, I use the Roland S1 for, you know, the main sounds and all the effects. So it's quite a very tiny and very versatile synthesizer. And the sound is just great. So I hope you guys are gonna love it. You take all good care, and yeah, let's talk about it later. See you guys.
Yeah, so I want to stress something there, because the track he wanted to remix is a 1 minute ambient track that's in 9/8, and he made a 4 on the floor techno banger.
Yeah.
There's no rules to it. That's one key. But also the other thing I want to mention is, like, when it comes to a remix, like Ted was asking, what's a great place to start or something like that, he found a small segment of, I think, the synth sound or something. And I want to say put that in the Digitact, but it might have been in that. What's that other? Is it Torso? Is that the one? Yeah. So I think he took a small sample and almost like a granular type of sample from this song, and then just built a completely new track on top of it. And even cooler than that is that he performed the release version live. Like, he played that part live and sent me, like, I think he did like an 11-minute, 3 takes or something, and sent me like the one he liked the most. And then in the master, when I was mastering, I just did a couple of frequency ups and like Valhalla Supermassive to kind of bring some layers between the transitions and things like that. But there's no rules to it. Just find a piece that resonates with you and do something with it. And I think that remix really showcases that idea. Ian, like, anything you want to add?
No, just I really like that. I like the approach as well. It's so up my alley. But yeah, let's make sure we get all of these videos in.
Curtis, anything? I know we're running short on time. Just if you want to add something.
No, just I like the idea that we're so far we've been talking about in the DAW, and it's a nice way to kind of go, hey, you can do this in boxes, and you don't have to spend so much time finessing everything. You can just go for it and be in the moment. It's great.
Very good point. All right, let's show Stillhead. And
hi, thanks for the question about how I approach doing a rework or remix, and what I find so great about doing a rework or a remix is that I get to pick and choose the parts from somebody else's work that I find really interesting. I can take out those parts that really that sparks my creativity, and then add on my own stuff. So I would try to first listen through all the tracks, all the stems, and then just keeping the stuff that can sort of make up for a canvas, like a soundscape or something that is the core feeling in that track for me, and then add on my own elements. So basically that would be like the original, some of the original dronescapes, and that's actually what is left. I think there was 17 stems in this project, and I've kept maybe 6 or 7. If you listen here, you have the original, some of the, I just call it the original Dronescape. So it's basically drones and guitars, and I think there's a Prophet synth as well. And as you can hear, there's not really like, you don't really have like a feeling of a composition in terms of specific chords or root notes or anything like that. I try to make something that's so open that I can sort of just build on top of that. But I don't think of music when I do ambient music as I would do with a written piece with A piece and B and C, or A, B, and then a chorus and then pre-chorus and whatever. I try to create a kind of emotion, something that would work well with imagery. I imagine pictures when I do ambient music, so yeah. And then I would add further on harmonic layers. I would add in some of my own samples, my own instruments. I always like doing that. I've sampled a pump organ. It's solo, that piece. You hear it without any effects. It gives some kind of, if you only use sample libraries and everything is very clean, without any noise, without any clicks, without any, everything's perfect. It just sounds dull and lifeless. So I always add in something. Also, I would take often the drone layers, and I'm a big fan of granular synthesis. So I would record a bit of this, put it into a granular synth, and play around with it and make new layers. So this is the new layer that came out of that. Just to add some more depth, movement. So it's panning a bit left, right. Yeah. And then in the end, I will always also add in some kind of field recordings or noise layers, something that gives this immersive feeling. So yeah, that's how I approach typically doing a rework. When is a rework or a remix finished? It never really ends, right? You can always do something more. So I try to limit myself a bit. And once I have those 3 elements, like the sound canvas and the root note of the bass and some melodic content, once that sort of sits well with the track, I consider it actually finished. I think what I find so great about it is actually the frame, that you have some limitations already set into your project before you start, and that's something that has helped me a lot. Having stems already and already have a frame to work out as a base point is a really great thing. Yeah.
That's fascinating. I've been wanting to ask Thomas like how he did that track, because it has the familiar sounds, but it's very different. And so it's interesting to see and to hear from him. But also, I was asking him in the chat, he said that he doesn't work in a BPM with ambient, because I was curious. And then I was like, do you part, I guess he's, maybe Thomas, it sounds like you might be playing all these parts like live or something, you know, like, but I was curious, like, how do you keep the things in line? And he said, I try to just feel the track and then I improvise layers and add new elements. That's fascinating. I might have to give that a try. I forget the term for tracks without BPM. There's a term for it, because that's a thing. But anyways, very, very cool. I know we're short on time. We have one more thing from Hydrofighter. It's a 40-second audio track. So just we will stay on screen, and then our mics are still going to be live. So just so you know, Eon Lake Curtis, if you need to cough or something, just mute yourself, because it's not like our video. So here's what Hydrofighter had to say for continuity coda.
Of adding in some small tom sounds. I usually listen to the stems first, then I chop up what I want into loops. I don't normally use all of the original stems. For this remix, I chopped up a lot of the drums into individual drum sounds, did some pitch shifting, added effects, and created a new drum sequence. But I did use a lot of the original drum loops as well. Then I just do my normal thing, like I'm writing a song, add effects, set levels, create the arrangement, etc.
Yeah, so I think some of that might have been cut off for some reason, but I'll put the full audio if Hydrofighter is okay with it in the Discord, because I know we're short on time. All right, Curtis, anything you want to add before we go?
Just this notion that there is, like, just to reiterate, there is no right or wrong way, and it's meant to be fun. From an artistic perspective, you're meant to have fun with it, and from a kind of careerist perspective, it's interesting to separate it from the fact that it's not a track that is necessarily going to be yours to then promote, to then send off to Spotify playlists, etc., or Bandcamp or whatever. And therefore, in my experience at least, that takes the pressure off a little bit, and you can just have fun and you can be playful with it. It's always important to be playful. We say this anyway, but particularly when it comes to remixing, because it's easy to overthink. It's easy to take it too seriously and think that, especially in the early days, that kind of thing. But yeah, just be playful with it.
Yeah, my favorite part about a remix is you can do something you don't normally do. You can do a different genre completely, do whatever. There's kind of like you're saying, that pressure of whatever you normally do is taken off. So if you hear a part in a track that you're like, oh, this could make an amazing shoegaze song, just go for it, right? It's a remix, like just go for it. So that's what I really like about remixes. And then the fact that your start point is no longer your own self. You have something from someone else and you can go, I never would have thought of starting with this, and then you just build a track around that. And it's a really great learning process to figure out new things for your own workflow and things like that. Ian, like, any last bits?
No, I totally agree. And I love hearing all these different approaches, but yeah, you've got to do your thing. I think if you're going to do a remix, you need to give something of yourself to it. So do something that you can get interested in, vibe with, and see where it takes you. Often that's what remixes be. Sometimes it's the people seizing on the same idea but going into different places with it. Sometimes it's, like you say, picking something that was only background in the original, but that's your main thing for your remix.
Yeah, definitely. So I want to say a massive thanks to everybody who did a remix for this album, but also for those that made video and audio, Stillhead, Atlas Castle, Hydrofighter, and Curtis and Neon Lake for talking about it. And I'm putting in the chat the Bandcamp link. I'll put the Distrokid link, which has all the streaming and the Bandcamp, in the YouTube description, but also the podcast show notes. And Curtis here already shared on the screen, so I'm putting that up. But yeah, Music for Reimagined Landscapes is the album. A lot of amazing artists on this. I definitely recommend just checking it out. I know it's my music originally, but it doesn't feel like it anymore because every artist just did something completely different with it. So yeah, I'd recommend it.
Yeah, you recommend it. Of course you would.
Yeah, of course I do. But no, it's not. It really doesn't feel like it's my album. Like, it's crazy when you give those stems to someone. It feels like it's their track at that point. I mean, the originals, like, still, it still feels like mine. But it's very interesting. They don't feel like the originals. There's something new, and I really think that's special. And just
what's quite mad about it is it does sound like an album of those remix artists, but it's so Sunwarpery throughout as well.
Yeah, completely. Completely.
I don't know. Those last two tracks are not something I don't work in noise. Last three, I guess. It was very cool to hear Smiling Errors and Lars and Willibrandt came with that crazy version of Ephemeral Enigma that I was not expecting.
That's what you need. I think it's amazing to see when we put it out into the Discord and all the community got to kind of see everything through. It was lovely to see the community boost and go and like just be appreciative of their own work and each other. It really brought everyone together in that regard. And I think that's important because, okay, so it's a community. You say it's not your release anymore, but these stems are yours and, originally. And it is through this process and by your hard work that the community has come together to revel in the collective joy that is Music for Reimagined Landscapes. And that is worth recognizing.
Well, thank you. And Stillhead says, glad I managed to catch the last part of the show. Congratulations with the release and everyone involved. Definitely, yeah. I mean, Thomas, you put out an ambient banger on that one. Everybody, I'm just amazed by what everybody put out. It's just crazy. And really quickly, Ted just asks, is there a max BPM or like a limit not to go over? Music's subjective. You can do whatever you want. You can go super slow. You can go super fast. Whatever works. Yeah, I mean, if you do go over certain BPMs, like maybe 180 or 190, you're gonna get a little crazy, but you could always do half speed and then you're just right back down. So
exactly, yeah. Depends how you divide it. That was the other funny thing about my remix, was that it's at the same tempo, I think, but I just double timed it.
Interesting. That's what gives it that techno-y sound. Because what was that, like 70 BPM the original?
It was 69, yeah.
Yeah, that sounds like me.
Yeah. How's Sunwarper, eh? Not 70. 69.
I should have. Why'd I doubt myself, right?
The remix is at 138. But
yeah, that makes sense. Very cool. All right. Well, with that, we're going to have to cut it short. We got to go. We will not be here next week because we're getting ready, but we will be doing something. We'll have a video up on Wednesday next week explaining what we're planning to do. Yeah. So, but we will have something the week after, and then we're going to have a lot after that. So yeah, there's a lot coming. Survey Channel says loads of fun to be involved. Wish I managed to get some additional words in. I briefly added some in my IG post. Great show, fellas. Yeah, I should have checked. I know some people said stuff on Instagram, but I was short on time this morning. But yeah, it's all good. Survey Channel. I think your song speaks for itself, my friend. But with that, we will be back. Not next week. We'll have a video next week, but we'll be back after that. Should be at the same time, but man, I don't know. I don't want to think about the time differences and wibbly wobblies. It's fine. We'll leave
It'll be a trip. Yeah, we do know that we will all, the three of us will all be back here for a normal show in 3 weeks' time. We're going on a little bit of an adventure, but yeah, more to come next week. It's gonna be good.
Yeah, but we'll have something for you in 2 weeks' time, and then a quick video for you next week. So with that, we will see you next time. And I gotta find the right video because we still have the countdown timer here, and I don't want to hit that. That one. All right, thanks for watching.